last time we also used Craig, there was like a gap in the recording. So I went and looked around, and it turns out that Craig has a buddy called Gark, which is Craig backwards. And Craig and Gark are going to work together to make sure we don't drop any recording content.
Are you certain you're pronouncing Gark correctly?
Gark? No, I'm not sure of the correct pronunciation of Gark. What do you think is the correct pronunciation of Gark?
I don't know. I don't know. And I mean, I think you and I both had Tomax and Xamot vibes.
100%. 100%.
Do you think, is this an implicit reference to Tomax and Xamot? It just seems such like a bizarre thing to go do that it's got to be right?
No, I mean you have to have
Tomax and Xamot on the D-Trace episode. If not, why not?
That's amazing that we didn't, because you're talking,
do you know that we didn't?
I know. I feel pretty confident that we didn't.
Yeah, wow. That's a very weird attribute of the D-Trace source space.
It really is. It's great. It's funny you mentioned that, Bryan, because as you're talking about Tomax and Xamot, first thought is, cartoon and action figures from whatever it was 35 years ago. Second thought was, I wonder if the people know that that's the name of the buffer and the other buffer in D-Trace.
It's completely, to me, it is not out of question that the variable names in D-Trace could surpass the G.I. Joe figures in ultimate fame, in lasting fame.
Okay, bold claim.
Okay, listen, I know you think I'm getting a little too big for my britches over here, but listen, our Tomax and Xamot are in daily use. These things are used all the time. They're Tomax and Xamot. This is not something that has left the generational chasm. The people are listening to this being like, they're having audio problems again. So Tomax, there's just absolutely no way this has left the gen. I don't think G.I. Joe. I don't think anything.
Such an okay boomer kind of thing. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, this is an okay extra thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, I don't think any of this has left the generational chasm. But anyway, these are bit characters in Twins, right? Twins that would complete one another's sentences.
Joined at the pain. Do you recall this?
Joined at what?
Joined at the pain. You don't remember this part? If you hurt one, if you hurt one, it would injure the other.
You injure the other. God, yeah, God, that's right.
Yeah.
So we're here because of course, Jeff and Fiog would have been better.
As they're known only to you, but that's fine.
They're known only in my inner dementia. So hey, I got another question. Speaking of like podcasts and generational lore and total lack of introductions. So as we're in Books in the Box 4, so we're excited to talk about some of the books we've read since July of last year. So it's been a little while, a little longer than a year. And one of the books I read in the last year is, and you should know that by the way, last year I was with my books clothed, which I felt like I had to offer up. But like re-listening to it, I felt I sounded even weirder than it sounded at the time. I just felt like I'm like, I am not going to be, but I still want to be with my books, but I want to be in the litter box. So I brought my books to work. I've got my, I kind of got the books I wanted to talk about. Brought one thing. And one of them was Sunburst: The Ascent of Sun Microsystems. Did I talk about this book? I swear in one of our intros, I talked about this book. Because
I think you did mention that.
God, you're feeding this. It's because you know what I ended up doing? I got this from High Noon, which you gave to me or re-gifted to me, depending on one's interpretation.
I didn't
for my birthday last year.
Gave to you used. I bought it, read it, and gave it to you. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I say gift. I say like a flat out gift. I think 100%. It was so High Noon sent me to this book Sunburst. I swear I brought it up in one of our podcasts. So then I went through and listened to like the first 10 minutes of not every episode in the last year, because I think it's in there somewhere. And man, that is a weird cut through humanity. Huh. Have you done this? Like because in the first 10 minutes, like it's kind of Joker's Wild. I mean, I know Just like, I know I'm telling you, like, yes, this is you're doing the thing again where you're telling me the thing that I've been telling you nonstop for 3 years.
You mean us talking about some action figures we had 35 years ago is not out of character?
And the fact that they could telegraph pain. I think that's such a great pull. Exactly. And so, but in particular, a detail that I had just forgotten is the SBF in the SBF trial, it coming out that he believed that Shakespeare was like mathematically not the greatest author of all time, and then forcing you to explain that against your will.
Oh God, I do remember that. I remember giving it an explanation, and then you pausing and saying basically that I had given the most credit possible to SBF.
It did. You really were trying to go out of your way, I felt, to give weight to this absolutely zany idea. But yeah, no. So that is just such a weird cut through the last year, and then I couldn't find that. I'm like, maybe I didn't mention it. But
we have transcripts. You know this, right? Like you could search the transcript anyway.
I should search the transcripts. Yeah. So this. Well, so do you want to kind of kick off with this book? Just
yeah, let's go.
Yeah. All right. So so just to get it on there, because I think one of the things we have said is that there's not a great history of Sun, and I actually think that this book, that Sunburst, is is the closest one we've got. I think it's pretty good. Written by Sun employees, kind of covers up until 1990. But I thought it was really good. Goes through a lot of the kind of the from a the thing I love about it is it's written by Sun employees, but it definitely pulls no punches. I mean, in particular, they really throw Bill Joy under the bus in a way that was really very delightful. So felt no obligation to. But it's good. So anyway, that was what I want to get out there. Again, I'm convinced I brought this up earlier on the podcast, so I'm sorry for doing that. But just for the recording, as they say.
There we go.
And that who's that by? That is by Mark Hall and John Barry, with a forward by Tom Peters. Feels very, very 1990 of it to have a forward by Tom Peters.
And having I read High Noon, obviously. How would you compare the two?
Better than High Noon.
Okay, cool. Because I felt like High Noon was
fine.
Yeah, High Noon was fine.
High Noon was fine, but I think this book is better. I think Sunburst is better.
Okay.
Now Sunburst obviously ends in 1990, so it is really only the history from like 83 to 90. But in some ways, like Sun is has several different lives within it, and that first life is a really important life. Where they've kind of caught this big workstation boom. They're riding Moore's law. They're developing their own microprocessor. I mean, it's just an explosion of stuff.
Yeah.
So I think this is a good chronicling of that kind of chapter. And then I don't know what you call 1990 to 94 is kind of a bit of a doldrums. And then you hit Java and the internet and UltraSpark and Solaris. So.
And I feel like that's where High Noon really covered. Presciently, really up to the peak. I feel like the title was even more on the nose than the author could have possibly.
It was a higher noon than they could have possibly known. It's like I knew the sun was going to set. I knew the sun was actually going to be invaded,
explode,
exactly.
So how do you want to do this? I mean, I've got a few. We've also got Nick up, who has volunteered to bring some book recommendations. Where do you want to start?
I say we just run robin. Let's just. Okay, Ron Robin. And actually, let me ask you this. Do you, and obviously I haven't answered this question for myself, are there any books that were recommended to you in a previous Books in the Box episode that you've read?
Yes.
That you read last year?
Yes.
And what do you think? Yeah.
So I read Into a Raging Sea by...
that was mine. Yes.
Yeah. God, I loved it so much. So
good.
This was a ship that was destroyed spoiler, in Hurricane Joaquin, and a description of, from the, I was going to say flight data recorder, but the shipboard equivalent. So a narrative pulled from that was just fascinating about all the failures of leadership and failures to recognize changing conditions, back to onshore mismanagement. Which tragically ended with All Souls Lost. It was just a fantastic book.
A fantastic book. You're not giving away the ending, I feel, unlike Moby Dick and the movie Major League. I feel this is not a spoiler because it is. I mean, it is the sinking of El Faro is kind of the subtitle.
Right.
I loved this book. I thought it was. I read it right after it was recommended to us. I gave it to my mom for Christmas.
Yeah, I gave it to my dad. Yeah.
Did you? Oh, look at that! Look at that!
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really great that we found one another. You know, we share such bizarre things in common. We give our parents disaster books.
Yeah, I mean, I should also note our parents actually went to college together too. But I'll just leave that for a future episode.
That is true. But the presence of the voice recorders on these things. So there are like 6 different recorders throughout the ship. So they have all of these conversations. I mean, it is mesmerizing. It is so good. And there's so much fractal failure here. It takes more than just a dummy captain to sink a vessel.
Oh, yeah.
And a hurricane.
Yeah.
Although actually those two are probably get you a dummy
most
captain
of the way there,
and a hurricane probably do get you most of the way there. But there's some other things too. And I thought that book was really, really great. So thank you for that recommendation. It was I
didn't give the recommendation.
You didn't give the recommendation. It was a listener who gave the recommendation while at sea.
Oh, wow.
They came in via Starlink and gave that recommendation. I special admiration to someone willing to give a marine disaster.
That reminds me of when we
actually at sea.
When we years ago now we were reviewing the Boeing book. Flying Blind.
Pre-fall. Flying Blind. Not pre-fall. Was the other one.
Yeah.
Yes, Flying Blind.
And I was reading that on a 787. Nervously, I would say.
But was there a clarinet playing in the background?
Pardon me, a 737, and no, there wasn't at the time. But that was obviously a highlight of the podcast.
Top of mind is the clarinet. I think one of our both all-time favorite moments on this podcast is when we got the author of Flying Blind on here, and his kid he's having to move from room to room because his kid is practicing the clarinet and sounding like pretty good for a kid.
Good. I also read another book that was recommended. Now, and this opens the door. Folks who are giving recommendations, really, you need to have read the book. And I think last year we accepted a recommendation for someone who said they were looking forward to it, hadn't read the book, we're looking forward to it. And this is Doom Guy by John Romero.
Yes.
One of the authors of Doom. Almost a rebuttal to Masters of Doom, which painted Romero in a very bad light. I hated this book. I can't I can't even I just rage read my way through this book, just feeling like I felt so passionately that I couldn't just put it down, although my wife insists that that's a thing one could do, not something I'm capable of.
This is the other thing you and I have in common. The incapability of putting down a bad book and also incapability of not complaining to our spouse about it.
That's right. She's like, why don't you put it down? It was just atrocious, poorly written, weird narrative vignettes that kind of that because I don't care about John Romero and I didn't beforehand and I care less now, just made no sense to me. So couldn't stand it. But this actually dovetails into a recommendation I'd give. I had forgotten that I'd read this book, but Jordan Mechner, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing his name correctly, but the author of Prince of Persia. Wrote a bunch of was an avid or an intense journaler during the period when he was creating Prince of Persia, selling it, publishing it, porting it, and so forth. And Prince of Persia,
amazing. Did you play Prince of Persia when it first came out?
You know what? I played it on the Mac, not on the Apple. So I think the answer is
on the Apple II GS. Yeah, I think. And it was like peering into the future.
Totally. And it was the
amazing.
The technology that what they were able to do in the Apple was kind of unthinkable at the time. And I remember it being spectacular on the Mac too, and probably even better, but probably less magical just because, there were other game, the technology was more advanced, the system was more advanced, but his description of building it and publishing it, interacting with the publisher and just the rotoscoping, the inspiration from adversity, from constraints. It was everything that I wanted this this Doom book to be, and that wasn't. And Metzger's notes from the time, or his journaling from the time, just published beautifully with great graphics. It was awesome. Can't recommend it highly enough.
Okay, that's awesome. I have this book, but I have not read it, and I've been meaning to. I also played. Did you play Karateka? Karateka?
No, that was his first game, right?
Yes, his first game.
Yeah. No,
so
I didn't.
I played
read about
Karateka on the Atari 800.
Nice.
Definitely, it feels like another day down at the home over here. But which was and Karateka itself was definitely differentiated. It was amazing. Yeah. But Prince of Persia was just so next level. That's great. So the book was good.
Book is really good, and as you know, I'm mostly like an ebook person, just because I don't like clutter, or rather, I've saturated with clutter, and I don't want to get rid of existing clutter. But I got the physical copy, and the which is really important, just the graphics, the images, all that stuff, and just the tactile. It's just a really well made book. So a really terrific one.
I want to say that like Stripe Press made this book. Published this book.
Yeah. That's right. You know what? I've got it in my cabinet right here, but I think that's correct.
This is the value of being among your books when we're doing this.
Well,
and clothed and among the books. So
have to emphasize that point. Yeah.
Oh, I love the walking away from.
That was. I mean, I got a physical microphone. I got it right here.
There you go. I got this book right here.
Yeah.
And is it by Stripe Press?
Yes, it is. Yep.
So
ideas for progress. Yes, press.stripe.com. Yes, that's right.
Okay.
It's a great book.
So, keeping with this group is a great segue to a book that I'm reading now and really enjoying. So, actually, first of all, you've laid down the law based on. When you were saying like you may only recommend a book you've already read, I'm like, okay, clearly there is something went wrong in a previous recommendation from last year. I'm going to recommend this book, even though I'm probably but 2/3 of the way through it. Is that still safe? I'm reading it actively.
Yes. I want to be clear. Last time the recommendation was unread. Like I think the book had not yet been published. So
okay, so in their to their credit, this is not someone who's actually trying to sabotage you, but.
No,
this is a book you're going to read anyway, don't you think? Because you were waiting for Romero's like kind of.
Yes,
response.
It had. I mean, it had some of the same shibboleths that we look for in like a dubious movie, which is something we've discussed ad nauseum. But its publication date had been pushed out several times.
Yes,
another good sign that like things are not going well. So I mean,
things are going well. Yes.
I suspected I wasn't going to love this book already, so which is a fair critique.
But in part because in order to, Masters of Doom goes into this fracture, right? And it's kind of like, wasn't it going to be hard for you to have a kind of an account from Romero that squares it all and is still sympathetic? I mean, isn't it hard to be? I need to read Masters of Doom. Is that?
That's totally fair. Barking? That is my dog barking. She's just like,
did the dog read a book, or is the dog like? Dog's like, I got a book recommendation, but I haven't read it yet. Am I allowed to even like?
It's like, let me in. Come on, I just want to. Exactly.
So the on Stripe Press, I am reading a book, and I don't know how I got to it. I thought I got to it from Sunburst, but a book that is really interesting on the history of Silicon Valley, written in 1985. So it is very semiconductor heavy and very well written. It's the major minus is there are absolutely no sources whatsoever. There are no references, which really kind of sucks because I don't think it's not gossipy. I don't think the stuff is wrong. And I've already encountered some of the sources that this guy clearly used. But the book is called The Big Score by Michael S. Malone. Not a great title. And this is like a bit of a theme. And not really widely available. And actually, my copy, this is so great. When you get a copy of a used book, and it's been personally signed by the author, made out to Sue. It says, Sue, I hope I told some of the real stories that we PR people know, but can never tell. Thanks for being interested. Hope it meets your expectations. Michael Malone. Michael Malone, I don't want to speak on behalf of Sue, but I think it might not have met her expectations, or maybe it did. And she's like, nope, it definitely was what I was expected. That's why I'm giving it away. But it ended up in my possession. Great book. And it's been republished by Stripe Press.
Nice.
And so this book is loaded actually with some really good stuff. And has sent me down a couple of different paths. Just if I may. One is, and I'm sure there is like a canonical book on Fairchild, but this just reminded me that I really need to read a book that is dedicated to Fairchild. Fairchild Semiconductor, the subsidiary of Fairchild Cameron Instrument. And I just feel like this is true for like lots of companies and kind of eras in our history. But like every time I read about Fairchild or learn about Fairchild, I feel like it's something new, some new facet, something that is, and this is the Traitorous Eight leave Shockley Semiconductor and form Fairchild with the help of Arthur Rock. And it's the history of Fairchild in here is great. I'm not sure if we talked about it here, but the folks left Fairchild, formed many different companies. So Intel, AMD, National Semiconductor, and these companies were all called the Fair Children. Mm-hmm. And so here's my question to you, Adam. Given that Pierre Lamond is a founding member of our board, I feel, and that Oxide is his last company, I think Oxide is the last of the Fair Children.
Or maybe a fair grandchild, or like a direct Fairchild.
I feel that the fact that we had someone who is at Fairchild on our board, okay. I say we are, we're like one of those like super late in life children. Like, didn't like John Tyler, like President John Tyler, right? Was it John Tyler or Zachary Taylor? I honestly always get these two conflated. I'm sure I'm the only one that makes this mistake. But one of these two cats had a kid at like 95.
Got it. And we're the 5-year-old whose siblings are all middle-aged.
Absolutely. No, and then do you know that, like, again, it's either John Tyler or Zachary Taylor. I'm certain it's one of those two. That child also had a child like in their 70s. So there was someone who was like alive today whose grandfather was a president in like the 19th century. Pretty great. So yeah, I feel like we're like that. Not to make it
100%. Totally makes sense. Couldn't agree more.
Exactly like John Tyler or Zachary Taylor, depending on whichever one it was. But the history of Fairchild is remarkable. The history of Intel is also really remarkable. I feel this is, so have we talked about the oral history? That Pat Gelsinger's oral history. I'm not sure we talked about that here.
I don't think we have. We talked about them from the Computer History Museum.
From the Computer History Museum.
Yeah, I don't think we've talked about that one in particular, but we've talked about them generally. And also, folks from the Computer History Museum, we remain available to discuss them as a spin-off podcast.
Right. You may remember us from the stack of letters that you have not responded to and the restraining order that you have taken out against us.
Yes.
But yes, we folks at the Computer History Museum. The other thing that drives me nuts on these things, I don't know how often you listen to these. They also put ads on them like pretty frequently. And you're like, I am the 400th viewer on this thing, which is already like a shame because I'm listening to this amazing oral history that should be listened to by many more people. And I'm getting like an ad every 10 minutes. It's like, can we?
I pay for YouTube explicitly because of some of these ones. And like both to treat them as a podcast and to get rid of ads, like to run it in the background when I'm driving or whatever. So no ads.
Yeah, that's almost worth doing. But by the way, like Computer Museum, that money should not be going to YouTube. That money should go to you. So we should. But there was just in terms of Intel, I mean, because a lot of these folks have done oral histories at the Computer History Museum, and I think that a full history of Intel needs to be written. Intel is in a massive pickle right now, and I think the history of Intel is more relevant than ever before.
You're totally right. Like I think the history of Intel to the present day would be like great perspective because they're at such a tricky spot, and understanding how they got there, very interesting.
Yeah, they're in a tricky spot, and I mean, I do think it's like things are going to have to really, really change. So the other thing I might recommend is, this took me there's an I'll drop this in the chat, but an interview. I don't think it's really an oral history with Jerry Sanders, who is the founder of AMD. And there's a profile of Jerry Sanders in the Big Score. That guy is wild. And all I knew about Jerry Sanders was famously the pink pants. So do you know anything about Jerry Sanders?
No.
Okay.
No. Zero.
Founder of AMD. Very colorful guy. Worked at Fairchild. Really interesting to hear him in his own words, and famously wore pink pants to IBM when he was calling on IBM as a way of kind of like, as a way of being abrasive, basically. Turns out he never wore pink pants to IBM. That was totally made up. That is completely apocryphal. So literally the only thing I knew about him was just a myth. But
that's great.
Really, really, really interesting guy. The history of AMD is really interesting in contrast, because AMD and Intel are founded at almost the same time. And it was said that Noyce raised $5 million for Intel in 5 minutes, because Noyce has already had a big winner in Fairchild. And when they got Noyce to go from Noyce was the last one to commit from Shockley to Fairchild, and Noyce was kind of the leader of the group. So and Noyce is a really interesting person in many different dimensions, up there with like World War II is stressful. Robert Noyce is interesting. Yes. Okay, great. But Noyce is super interesting. So he raises $5 million like in 5 minutes. And the line that Jerry had was from AMD was that like, yeah, it took me 5 million minutes to raise $5 was Jerry Sanders' line. But really interesting. And then that took me to, and I won't recommend the book because I haven't read it yet, but I did listen to the oral history with Hector Ruiz, who was the CEO of AMD. And man, that oral history was outstanding. So he is the CEO of AMD. He is who Jerry Sanders anoints as his successor at AMD. And Ruiz in particular, the two things that he does that are very, very painful for the company to do are they spin off their foundry. They actually have to sue Intel because their agreement with Intel prevented them from using an outside foundry. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
So they literally, you just think, this is like one of these crazy things that I guess I knew, but I had forgotten that AMD was by a previous agreement with Intel settling out x86. They could not they had to use their own foundry. And so Jerry Sanders famously said, real men build their own fabs.
Mm-hmm.
So there was this kind of idea that AMD had its own fab for that reason. But they kind of bound them to that, and they had to first sue Intel to get out from underneath their own fabs, and to be able to actually outsource that. And then the other thing that he did was apparently they got very close to an acquisition with NVIDIA that NVIDIA wanted to do, but they couldn't do for a reason that he doesn't elaborate on. Something there. I'm not sure what that is, and which is amazing. Or interesting anyway. And then he leads the acquisition of ATI. So it's like, and this all happens in 2005, 2006, 2007. Anyway, this is a long, this is from the Big Score and me kind of going down these various, I wouldn't say rabbit holes because this is like super relevant stuff that is very, very current. But.
So I was going to hold on to this. So that sounds awesome. Definitely going to check out that one. I was going to let other folks join in here, but one of the books I want to recommend, it's like dovetails so perfectly with that one. So this is Chip War by Chris Miller.
Oh, yes.
Have you read this?
That is on my, how is it? No, I really want to read it. How is it?
Awesome. And I cannot wait to hear your review of it. In part, so very similar. Like it starts at least in very similar ways. Starts with Fairchild, starts with Silicon Valley, history of semiconductors, Intel, AMD. I didn't know that Micron was founded in Idaho. I'm not sure why I sort of thought of Micron. Yeah, I just had not picked that one up. So anyway, but bunch of kind of there's some history of semiconductors that I'm sure will feel very familiar to you. A bunch of stuff that I just did not know. But then, in particular, chip war. The title comes from the geopolitical centrality of semiconductor manufacturing now, and like Morris Chang, who I think we've talked about before on the podcast. Like I fucking love, right? Like this
Amazing. Yeah.
I mean, what maybe one of like the top 10 heroes of the industry.
Yeah, I agree. Yep.
Just the degree he created, from TI, built out the country's greatest greatest national product, like just from his strength of will, just astounding. And I will just say that like the geopolitical implications of like Taiwan being an island claimed by China, and mentioned that like Trump has been explicit about how weird it is that the mob charges for production, but we are willing to protect Taiwan for free. Just a reminder that to vote in 8 days. I think it's very important to do that. But Ship War is spectacular. I think you're going to love it.
Yeah, and there is a great Morris Chang also did a great oral history with the Computer History Museum.
Oh, I got to check that out.
Oh, it's a must listen. No, yeah. I absolutely agree, and I mean, it's such an interesting story in so many different dimensions. Actually, and there's a great The Acquired on TSMC is also very good.
So good.
So
but
yeah,
like,
okay.
I didn't know there was one company that could make these like ultra UV machines like ASML in
the Netherlands.
Yeah. And then all from research, apparently from like our national labs. So very complicated, negotiation and horse trading that allowed all that to happen. But really very interesting.
That's awesome. No, I'm excited to read it. It's been on my kind of like mental queue, but for a long time. But I need time for that one to go to the front of the list.
Should we pull in our guests who've been waiting patiently?
All right. We kind of like I said, we'll Ron Robin it. Everyone can kind of we'll give a book and then we'll come around for another lap.
All right, Nick, you've been waiting very patiently.
Yeah, thank you. Am I coming through clearly?
You are.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Long-time listener, first-time caller. Thanks for opening up the stage. Appreciate it. I'll try not to inflate your guys' egos too much, but I really look up to both of you. So it's a pleasure to get a chance to talk to you.
I was just thinking, what could you possibly be apologizing for? Because we're such a pair of jackasses. But that actually is something to apologize for. I actually agree. That apology accepted, I think.
Thank you. First, on the note of Stripe Press, I wanted to say I have their Working in Public book about open source software development, and just the book is just so beautifully built. Like you can lay it flat and it just like opens up nicely. It reminds me of like old books from like back in college in the library. You'd find that just like are just beautifully designed and stuff. So those are definitely worth the money.
That's great. Yeah.
But that's not my pick. I'll keep it short here. I have little kids running around and they'll probably drag me out of my office pretty soon. But I have two. One is kind of old. I'm sure it's kind of been recommended maybe before, but Creativity Inc. by Ed Catmull. I don't know if anyone has read that one, but Ed Catmull, he founded Pixar with some other folks. I'm forgetting all the names, but just a legend in the history of computer graphics. I think he studied with Ivan Sutherland. I think that's the name, who did the original, I want to say, Sketchpad software of like the penultimate like computer graphics program. So just really good history there. Really interesting history about Pixar, but his thesis is great because he's talking about after they had their first success in Toy Story, his job changed and is like it's like he's achieved his goal of making an animated feature film with graphics, computer graphics. But after that, his job sort of shifted to wanting to build a company with a really great creative culture, and I just thought that was great. And he has a lot of really good insights in how he did that. I haven't finished the book, but I'm well enough into it to say that it's a worthy recommendation there.
You've crossed the Leventhal threshold where
Yeah,
you
I
can
think so.
confidently
I would say
assert that you're not going to, no one will be rage reading it.
yeah, I'll put my name on it.
There we go.
So there's that, and then I think this book came out this year. It's Hardcore Software by Steven Sinofsky, and I'll drop a link in the chat. But it's just a fantastic history of Steven's work at Microsoft. He started in about 1989, and he was put on the project of building the tools around C++. So it's just a really great history of like the early days of C++ and Microsoft, and like they're ascending, into their monopoly status, and things are growing and all kinds of stuff. But like really just interesting stories. But the thing that kind of struck me as interesting was just how intertwined Microsoft's history was with the development of C++ and how they embraced it early and kind of jumped on it and made it a better product than it might have if they hadn't taken it up. And it was their hedge against next Objective C, because Objective C was coming out, and like Bill Gates was like jealous of the cool stuff that Steve Jobs was doing with, and everybody was getting the hype around object-oriented programming was like really starting to fire up, and so it was really interesting to see that like literally like C++ was the like their play against Objective C, and like it's just really interesting because like you kind of every company has their kind of pet language, and I didn't know that C++ was their original one, so to speak. That it's a great book. Also, I don't want to spoil it or anything, but Stephen becomes the technical assistant to Gates himself, so he's like working side by side with Gates. So like he's got a pretty good insight in just like what Bill was like at the time and all the interesting things they're doing. And there's just so many good lessons for software engineers, and it's just a really great book. It's available. You can buy it in print, I think, but it's there's an audiobook, which I think Adam, you mentioned that you like
Yeah.
you like audiobooks.
And for Adam, there's an audio
No,
book.
it's I say that because like I am sitting here among my books, but I don't really have time to read anymore now that I have young kids running around and work and all that stuff. So the only time I really get is like when I'm standing at the sink doing dishes. So that's usually when I listen to you guys do your live stream and stuff. So it's audio is really important just to even have a chance to read anything. So it's
Well,
really
we are
great.
very pro audio. So
Yeah, it's great.
and have listened. I think most of the Computer History Museum oral histories I've listened to have been at the sink doing dishes. So I'm right there with you. So Steven Sinofsky is there during a pretty bare knuckled period at Microsoft. Is there any kind of reflection back on like, I mean, Microsoft? This is kind of the era where they are. It's kind of up to no good. I mean, they're definitely abusing the market power they've got. Does they have any kind of? Is there any kind of Robert McNamara in retrospect?
Yeah, I think it will probably get into that. He did have some interesting insights. I can't really remember off the top of my head, but it seemed like they were just trying their best, to like really win the market. And it's like I think part of it was when he was a TA, a technical assistant for Gates. He got to participate in like one of the offsites with all the executives, and they would like brainstorm, how to like, I can't remember the phrase, but like he really let on that Gates was extremely paranoid at the time, and like I think this was around the time that the internet was starting to pick up. So it's like you could tell,
or maybe after the internet had already been picked up.
Yeah, well, like where it
Microsoft's a little late off the mark on the old internet.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. I think where I'm meaning is like I think they went on a recruiting trip to a university or something, and like there was a snow day, and they were checking the like email, like they were logging on to the like university's network, and they could see like it was just on fire, and they're just like, okay, yeah, everybody's just sitting around emailing each other. This is the future. Like we got to get networking software figured out. And then
this is actually, he mentions this in his Wikipedia article. Cornell University, 1994. After being stuck in a snowstorm, which means it was like definitely not in June or July, but could have been in any other month of the year. That's interesting. They were, sounds good. I mean, I will confess that my disposition towards Sinofsky and kind of Microsoft execs of this era, it does kind of match my mother's disposition towards Robert McNamara, which is like, I'm glad that you can read something from him and not be overcome with rage.
Sure. Yeah. I haven't gotten that far in the book to where I might be opinionated against him. So he's a fresh name to me. So
there you go. You pair it with Jerry Kaplan's Startup book. I know we've talked about from time to time, but that's a really good book that is written from the outside of Microsoft. That's about Go, the company, not the language.
Well, and Showstopper too. I mean, we talked about
Showstopper too. Yeah.
I guess more was that was not particularly insight. I mean, it was a journalist, following folks around. I thought that was a great one too.
I thought that was a great one too. Yeah. G. Pascal Zachary.
That's right.
Friend of the pod, or at least on the pod.
On the pod.
Has struggled with audio issues on our podcast, which is...
Yeah. I mean, right. Not a small group of people.
Well, Nick, those are great recommendations.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it, guys. See ya.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks. And thanks so much for hopping up here, giving the recommendations. All right, who's next, Adam?
How about Josh?
Another long-time listener, first-time caller, and I am here to recommend Exploding the Phone by Phil Lapsley, which is about phone freaking and the subculture that grew up around exploiting the phone system. Very much written for a general audience, so don't expect like super crazy technical details, but it's really him diving into that culture and getting interviews from people who were there. And it does have a very good high level explanation of a lot of the technical elements as well that I found very interesting.
Josh, great. Super cool. And Josh, if I may, do you feel like you lived through some of the periods of this book, or was
the same question?
Oh, no, I was.
Okay. Without us asking you for your birth year, could you please provide us your birth year?
It's fine.
Tomax and Xamot, do they have any special attributes that you can name?
Wait. No, they don't. It's fine. I was 13 when this book came out, so.
Okay.
Young.
Got it. There you go.
Came out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Published in 2014.
2014.
I don't. That math doesn't math too good for me, but yes.
Okay. I think Josh is telling us very gently that we are extraordinarily old.
That's right. Sounds right.
He's like, I don't know I've never had a rotary phone.
Right.
Actually, I have a rotary phone in my house, which is my father took an old payphone and modified it to work with modern telephone signaling. So,
okay. I think we got an honorary Xer here. I think we gotta promote this guy up. We like it. Interesting. So
it was when the hardcover got published, IG. But yeah, no.
This looks like a great book.
lots of great technical detail, lots of great like social and technical details, and it also touches on how the whole phone freaking subculture ties into the homebrew computing scene that was happening around the same time. You know, of course, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak were selling blue boxes to the rich and the famous.
100%.
And a bunch.
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, this is the era of the anarchist cookbook, and this is, I mean, this is much more. This is our lived experience. I dare say, Adam, that you and I were on the.
Totally.
I was too chicken to actually do anything, but I definitely was mesmerized by it all.
Yeah, there's some really great stories in there. This book is also why I own several volumes of the Bell System Technical Journal, because I was visiting the University of Pittsburgh, and they just literally had the shelf of books that they didn't want anymore sitting in the lobby, and I was like, there's like 5 volumes of the Bell System Technical Journal right here. I see someone else mentioning Kevin Mitnick's books. I started reading Ghost in the Wires, but I never finished it, and that is why I haven't recommended it. But by what I saw, that was also very good.
I have a banger of a recommendation for you that I don't think and Adam, I'm not sure if you read this, Out of the Inner Circle by Bill Landreth.
Yeah, I'm gonna need to read that.
One.
That's cool. That definitely right up my alley. And
very
course,
much the same era.
I'm gonna link the Cuckoo's Egg here. I think that was recommended on a previous books in the box, but still,
Cuckoo's Egg is
great classic.
Yeah, that is that's good though. All right, you definitely, this is a very good. Exploding the Phone looks really good. And because it was a very finite era, right, Adam?
Yeah.
And it's like that is our youth. And
sort of like 80s, early 90s kind of neighborhood.
Yes. And the one thing I did is that you could use was it a blue box that you could use to get free long distance calls? I did do that a couple of times. Then I just got scared that I was going to get caught.
That's exactly what it was, and the book dives into why and how that worked, and because the actual exploit is, you probably know this already. I don't know, but it was that they were sending control information along audibly. The voice lines audibly, and
when you could give the tones that would be emitted when quarters were dropped into a payphone, and you could then emit those as control signals.
That was a red box.
That's red box.
Yeah, that's red. I didn't use red box. I'd use the.
But the other thing about that book is it gave me a real appreciation for just how amazing the engineering behind analog phone systems and electromechanical switching before the move to digital was, and the incredible amount of work that went into making that possible. Some really sophisticated systems.
Yes, and I can tell you that Adam and I have both been transported back to the same place at the same time. Adam?
Yes. To the kernel technical discussion by Bonwick Sr.
By Jeff Bonwick's dad, who walking us through these Victorian systems, and in particular that they had to pressurize these tubes. I remember the squirrels were a major problem, eating these lead pipes or whatever.
Yeah, no, this was this bears kind of bearing. So there are these pictures long ago of, like, you look at the telephone poles and there are just bajillions of wires. And so the great innovation was to take all these wires and pack them in a tube, and they used paper as an insulator, and they put it in these lead pipes, and the squirrels like to chew on the lead pipes. Water would get in. Paper is not a great insulator when it's wet. And so the solution was to pump like 5 psi air through these lead pipes to like blow the water out so it wouldn't infiltrate in the and like back when we heard this talk, which was probably like 2001, 2002,
right?
There were like DSL lines that people were needing to connect in on that still were getting routed through this kind of connectivity. Yeah, it was wild.
And when he described how the party lines worked,
Yeah.
And wasn't that because didn't DSL never work? At whose house did DSL never work? It wasn't your house. I feel like there's someone in our immediate circle had like a house where DSL simply could not work.
Yeah, I think that's
Am I
right.
remembering this correctly?
Because they were getting like the bounce off of the.
They're getting the bounce because they had the last line and on what was an old party line.
Yeah.
And everything else had been clipped away. And I visualize Bonwick's dad at a whiteboard with like a diagram of a squirrel. Am I making that up? Is that an implanted memory?
No, you know what? Let's say it's true. It feels true to me.
Yeah. Sorry.
The other talk, Brian, that this reminds me of, I don't remember. This is about 4 years ago. We were doing the hardware hacking, 2-day, 3-day event. There was a guy who was talking about freaking elevators, which apparently elevators still use kind of some of these antiquated systems. So if folks Google up Will Caruana, he's written a bunch and talked a bunch about phone freaking for elevators. And in particular,
I'm going to need to watch that.
It's really interesting. In particular, I obtained, I won't say how, a list of all the phone numbers for all of like the blue light phones and pay phones at and elevators of my alma mater. I haven't called them for a while.
I haven't called them for a while. Is this
Your Honor?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
God, you would think after the Dave Hicks, Dave Lightman fiasco, and after the attorneys gave you the stern talking to, and
that's right,
several episodes ago.
Yeah, I also if that book, definitely go visit one of the 2 telephone museums if you can. There's one in Maine and one in Seattle, and the Seattle one's bigger, and I haven't been there yet, so something to look forward to for me.
Yeah.
But I went to one in Maine, and they were actually shutting down a temporary exhibit on phone freaking, with from partly I think based on this book, and they let me peek around in it before it got shut down for good. So that was really cool too.
That sounds really neat. That's a great recommendation.
Yeah,
that is a great recommendation.
All right. I'll let someone else talk now.
It sounds good. Ian, you're what do you got for us? You've always got good stuff for us.
With the exception of Masters of Doom, which seems like it was a nudge.
Well, if you loved it, you can still give that recommendation. But
there was definitely a unreliable narrator involved, I believe.
Yeah.
The first that I've got to recommend was a find at the Last Bookstore in LA. So if you're ever in downtown LA, it's worth checking out the Last Bookstore.
It wasn't actually like the final bookstore in the city and county of Los Angeles. This is just called the Last Bookstore.
It is confusingly named the Last Bookstore, but there are more than one bookstores in LA, thankfully. The book is called The Mouse Driver Chronicles: The True Life Adventures of 2 First-Time Entrepreneurs by John Lusk and Kyle Harrison. This is a fun one. It's two people graduate from Wharton in 99, and one of them has done for their final kind of presentation, they pitched a business in which they're producing mice that look like the head of a golf club as a novelty item. And they decide that instead of going to work for a large consulting company, they're going to move to San Francisco and try and make this computer accessory a reality. It's interesting to see all the differences in doing hardware then compared to now, but also the differences in information availability, because there's a number of mistakes made that is oh yeah, that's obviously going to happen. This is a common mistake of what happens when you try and make hardware.
I have already ordered it. That looks that looks just grand. That looks terrific. Also, it sounds like they wrote it themselves. I mean, this is them describing their own failed
Correct,
endeavor.
yes. It is the two of them who wrote it. I believe they're still working in the industry and have gone on to have some pretty interesting careers. But it's also, there's like two other things that are kind of interesting about it. One is this kind of like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern's-esque nature of it, because this is all happening in 99, 2000 in San Francisco, and they have like some of their friends at Wharton have decided to go and either start or join tech companies, and they're kind of watching the tech bubble from like an adjacent like viewpoint. So that's fun.
Ian, are you? First of all, I love that. Are you making that reference for my benefit? I mean, I feel like this is one of these references that Adam, do I make this reference more frequently than others?
Yes, I think that's fair. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm not sure if, but I first of all, I love that. Just that I not having this reference echoed back to me, but I love the Rosencrantz Guildenstern effect of like, you've got these kind of like these two people making a mouse shaped like a golf club. And meanwhile, Hamlet is going on behind them of like the .com bubble. Ian, this sounds great.
Yeah, it was a really enjoyable one for me. I thought this was a good pickup.
That is awesome. Do you have any others in your? We can keep Bryan Robining, by the way, but we can.
Yeah, I have a bunch. So next up, I've got Hatching Twitter: A True Story of Money, Power, Friendship, and Betrayal by Nick Bilton.
Oh, here we go. Okay, we've arrived at the Twitter sub theme.
Yeah, so I looked through the previous episodes, and I don't think this one had been recommended.
No.
Published in 2014.
Interesting.
So it's like it kind of goes through early founding of Twitter through to early 2010s. So it's like, yeah, a really interesting period of time for the company that I was unaware of the history of, particularly with kind of Jack Dorsey's involvement early on in the company and the degree to which the claims he makes about inventing Twitter are, where those claims meet reality. Like it's interesting to see the collaboration and the some of the stories that happen when you start a company in your early to mid 20s with 4 people in San Francisco at that time, I guess.
Well, speaking of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, I mean, this is when Adam and I stumble onto the stage in 2007, into the offices of Obvious, and I come out of that thinking, my God, I'm never going to use that. What a bunch of clowns. And Adam comes out of that being like, I got to go reserve AHL before the American Hockey League does.
Yeah, well, you're both
right. We were both right. This looks good. And I mean, naturally segues into a book that I read very recently and enjoyed very much. Well, I feel like too often around here, we're talking about good books with bad titles. I got to say, Hatching Twitter is kind of in that category. I definitely think The Big Score is in that category. I don't like that as a title. Into the Raging Sea is a good title, but the Sunburst is kind of lame. A good book with a really good title is Character Limit. And this is by Kate Conger and Ryan Mack on the recent history of Twitter. And it does kind of the full history of Twitter from the beginning, but clearly focusing on the post-Musk era. And Adam, this is a great book. I thought it was really, really good.
Am I misremembering that this came in from the socials from like an Oxide and Friends listener? I feel like someone sent this in to us. Maybe not.
That might have been me.
There you go. Our biggest fan.
Exactly. I was definitely some key lines that, I mean, like, no matter how bonkers you think Musk is, he's more bonkers than that. And right, exactly. And I know you're thinking to yourself, well, I think he's pretty bonkers, and you should. I mean, You know what? I'm not going to give away any spoilers. Let's just say he's real bonkers, and he does something. You know, this has a bit of a Bad Blood kind of John Carrier's Bad Blood about Theranos, kind of like each chapter crazier than the one that came before it. You will read this book
great.
quickly.
This sounds great.
You will read it quickly.
This sounds like a beach read.
And I will say that more or less, I'm going to say this, and I won't say more than this. I'm going to say every single person in this book comes across as unsympathetic, except for someone who is a regular Oxide and Friends listener. That's all I'm going to say. Who comes across as very sympathetic, and is very sympathetic because, of course, they've got great tastes in podcasts. But everyone else comes across as really quite unsympathetic. I mean, even the folks. I mean, I think again, it's well told. I think that there is nuance to everybody except for Musk, who's pretty devoid of nuance. But it's a good read, and it is highly recommended. So
awesome! I'm definitely gonna check that out. That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, I would love to try to coax Kate Conger and or Ryan Mack on here to come talk about it. I would. But, you know, I keep trying to tag them on Blue Sky in a way that now I'm just worried is coming across as creepy. So I need to stop doing it. But it's like, boy, I sure wish tag Kate Conger and Ryan Mack. Anyway, it's looking a little thirsty. But I would love to talk with them about this book because I think it's a mint. So the other thing that this book has going for it is the lawsuit, actually.
Because employment lawsuit?
No. So recall, I mean, this history is so insane that we just forget all these things, that Musk had to be taken to court to buy the company.
Right. Right. The shareholder lawsuit. Right.
Right. Which is, you're just like, right. This thing goes from
because his offer was
takeover to a hostile takeover from the other perspective.
Because his offer was like 420.69 or something. Made on a whim,
right? And so going into the details there, it's so in particular that's how we have all these text messages, and you've got Jason Calcanis telling Musk, "You have my sword," and all this other just nonsense comes from the fact that there was discovery in this case.
Right.
So you have all these facts of text messages that these yahoos all sent to one another. And David Sachs and all these other morons that are it's really wild. And I got to say, I think I'm hoping there's going to be a sequel for when this thing is Twitter's on fire, but it's not yet destroyed. I think Twitter can go a lot lower. Anyway, highly recommended. Highly recommended.
How about Tom? Friend of the pod.
Is it okay if we don't talk about Twitter anymore? It's too painful.
Yes. Yeah. This is now. Yes. This now is the end of this Twitter discussion. I'm so sorry, Tom, and all other sympathetic Twitter folks.
Yeah. Anyway, long time caller. Hardly ever listener.
Fair. Yeah, that's fair.
I'm choking on my Diet Coke.
So, two particular books I want to mention. One is called The Maniac. Have I talked about this?
I don't think so.
It's a book about John von Neumann, and it's all based on factual stuff, but it's presented fictionally from first person stories about von Neumann, where the people telling the stories are other really famous people.
Oh, wild.
And it's a really good book. All this trivia about von Neumann, from, the computer stuff to all kinds of math stuff and atomic energy and yada, yada, yada. So, excellent book.
It is von Neumann fan fiction? I'm trying to what does the pitch to the publisher look like for this one? I don't know, but it ended up on Obama's favorite
lists or something. So
Yeah.
pretty good.
Yeah. I saw that Chip War was there as well.
I love that
and-
guy.
Yeah.
I really do. I'm sorry. I miss him.
Yeah.
Yes, Barack Obama, our president.
Yeah. So
Sorry.
von Neumann, of course, was a Martian, right? So clearly not.
Yeah, right.
Not actually human, but very interesting guy. So another book, which it's kind of cheating because I don't think anyone can get it anymore. Shift Happens. Have you seen this?
No, we do this all the time. We do books that people can't get anymore, unless you
Yeah.
really truly can't get it. What's it called?
Shift Happens. I just dropped it in. It's a history of keyboards, and it's the most beautiful book I possess. It is.
Wow.
It's going to last hundreds of years. It's all chock full of color photographs, incredibly detailed history of all this stuff. It's a huge labor of love.
Oh, so this is
It
not
was
merely out of print. You really do mean that this is unattainable because this is a Kickstarter that has sold out. Oh, interesting.
Right. So if you ever see one, other than in my office, you should grab it.
Tom, I guarantee you, Bryan and I are both currently trying to outbid each other for the loan copy on eBay.
Oh, no, that's not me at all. No, that's not me at all. You should let that other bidder win, though. That would be discourteous to
Very generous,
outbid them.
right?
Exactly. Yeah, this looks.
So it's really, really good.
That is really it is that okay. This has got me kind of like mesmerized because like the keyboard has actually kind of like changed the least of all of the accoutrements of computing.
Yeah,
Right?
but
The
it took a while to settle down. And in particular, the shift key, where it gets the title, the shift key had all kinds of different names and purposes and subtle side effects, and it's very interesting.
Tom, they say there are 37 Easter eggs hiding in the book.
Yeah, I haven't studied it hard enough to find those, but
Okay,
it's an amazing book.
This does look amazing. Yeah, wow, this looks amazing. Okay, yeah. So you know what? When you were saying that I didn't think you need to apologize for this book. I think apology kind of accepted. This is really you've like really teased us.
Total unobtainium. Yeah,
total unobtainium.
Yeah. So totally different set of things. You've probably heard of Slow Horses, the Apple TV show.
No.
It's a great spy show.
Okay.
But Slow Horses get their name from being in Slough House, where all the MI5 rejects gets sent to spend their time. But anyway, there's in addition to the TV show, which is great, there's 8 volumes of books which I've started reading, and they're very good. So look for Slow Horses.
For fiction, is this fiction, nonfiction? What is
fiction? Yeah, it's all fiction.
Fiction. Nice. Wait, and what's the? Based on Slough House series of novels. Got it. Okay, yeah, interesting.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, so they're really good.
I used to really like spy novels when I was a kid. And I'm not sure if that's because like it was the Cold War or not. That just makes me a product of the Cold War, or is that But yeah, this looks good. And more attainable than the unobtainable keyboard book.
Right. Than the book with like 120 known copies. Like the Gutenberg Bible is now. Yeah, right. Gutenberg Bible being more accessible.
Exactly. Tom, good stuff.
So yeah. I'm going to drop one more in here. It's The Last Philosopher in Texas.
Okay.
And it appeals to me because of my border El Paso heritage or whatever, but written by a Chicano guy who grew up in the basement of the local synagogue in El Paso. Very interesting stuff.
Interesting. And this is fiction as well.
Yeah. And
good.
Some of it is kind of poetic and some kind of magical realism. So it's and it's not really very finished, but a lot of wacko ideas in there. So it's good stuff.
Cool.
Tom,
This looks great.
Tom, I think it's fair to say you are an avid reader.
Yeah, I've been doing that since I was 6 or so.
Right. You add it all up. And do you have like books physically in your possession? Are you a physical books kind of a person?
I'm mostly ebook now, but for like computer history stuff, I like to get the real book. I don't know why, but.
And Tom, did you want to give a teaser about your idea for a podcast episode? Because Adam and I both think this is a very good idea.
Yeah, so we met last week, and I suggested that they come over to do a show in my home office where they rummage around my home office for goodies, and I explain what.
This is like American Pickers for computer manuals. So Adam, we're gonna turn it into like a buddy movie. We're gonna do it up. So we good.
I mean, in my mind, this is already converted into a heist movie where we walk away with shift happens.
No, not in front of Tom. What did I tell you? Not just DM'd it to you privately.
I tell you,
I said, do not read aloud in that DM.
Man,
it's pretty big and hard to conceal.
Yeah, and Tom, please ignore him. We look forward to being a guest in your unsecured home
on the way out
with my gigantic backpack.
Exactly. I take this gigantic backpack everywhere. Thank you very much. Now, if you may take me to your crown jewels, this would be great. I think not the heist. The heist.
No.
No,
The other part.
No, not the heist at all. Well, please, It's the other thing. The thing that's the cover for the heist. That'll be well. That's all blown. Oh, congratulations, Adam. Ruined it for everybody. But Tom, those are great recommendations.
Thanks.
All right, who else do we have?
We had Merriman Industries up first.
Hey guys, actual name is Xander.
Oh, hey Xander.
I have 2 books that I'll recommend really quickly, and I'm a little bit shocked if neither one has ever been recommended before. And the first one is really a callback to the Phone Freak book, and it is The Idea Factory by John Gertner about Bell Labs and the great age of American innovation. And yeah, I mean, obviously it goes over all the technological innovations that came out, but it also talks a lot about like where these scientists came from, like the state of science education in the first part of the 20th century. It talks about like the tenuous relationship between like the AT&T monopoly and the US government and how that went back and forth. Some of like their late innovations into the satellite era. So absolutely terrific. Big recommendation. The other one, because I don't think anyone's actually recommended a fiction book yet, is Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky. Let me make sure I got that name right. Yeah. And it's a science fiction book that imagines what a spider-based civilization would be like in terms of technology and communication and culture and government structure. And there's, a greater plot around that, but it's just really fun if you're like a little bit of a science nerd to think about, how spiders would communicate and what kind of society they would build.
That sounds that does sound fun. It sounds like it can kind of accompany our, we obviously read How Life Works by Philip Ball and learning about, the hyper ovulating frogs. And it's just, I feel like it's just takes a couple of twists of evolution for the spiders to be in control. So why not?
Yeah. I also like it because it only works as a book because you can emphasize with the spider when they're described. But if you were like watching it as a movie, you would probably just be caught up in the fact that it's a spider and it's maybe a little bit revolting to humans. So it's maybe one of the rare books that can only work as a book and could probably never be adapted.
That's always refreshing. Hopefully the book does well. I mean, so hopefully the book doesn't do so well that they turn it into a movie that's terrible. This looks like a good one.
Cool. All right, thanks everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Those were the good stuff.
And now Oliver.
Now me. Hey, Gen Xers. I had a couple of different ones, and I kind of threw them out because I realized they were all technical books, and I felt like I was at my usual meetup book club. So I got a new list of books. In the first one,
Technical books are good,
I
by the way.
wanted-
You can do technical books. You
Yeah,
don't have to feel like you.
we do like technical books. It's fair.
Well, so the technical book that I prepared a spiel for is actually kind of a product book. It's Honeycomb released a book with O'Reilly called Observability Engineering.
Oh yeah, interesting.
Charity Majors and Liz Fong wrote it, and we read this with my local DevOps Days chapter about a year ago. And to me, it was sort of my first introduction into the philosophy of observability practice, especially, if you're coming from a world where you don't have a lot of really deep instrumentation and then seeing what you actually do. Really highly recommend this book. I'll drop the link here. Oh, yeah, Bryan beat me to it. And not only that, we had Charity give a talk with us, which she was super helpful with.
Oh, that's great.
So I had a really good time with that book a while ago. I was looking through our list, and I was like, do I have any other ones that I can actually put through in there? And none that I finished. It is the only Boston DevOps Meetup book club group book that I've finished. But I do have others. One, actually, I sort of got reminded of when we were talking about a bunch of technical history books, and no one ever brought up AI, which I thought was ludicrous because it's 2024 and everyone talks about AI. But I was reminded of this book called Red Cloud at Dawn. It's about it's very ominous. I know. It's about the Soviet nuclear project, kind of a salient moment in history, where obviously the Manhattan Project really took off, and there was a solid 3 years there where everyone was, or 4 years, where everyone was kind of quaking in their boots all around the world, waiting for the other shoe to drop. And this book is about the espionage involved, which is pretty well documented, but also just how honestly, despite all the lack of resources and just through sheer will and depression, they were able to put together a really competent nuclear program, which was then after several years before the French or the British got it. So that was an interesting book. And the other book is
have we talked about Biohazard before here? This is by Ken Albeck on the Soviet bioweapons program.
I think you loaned me that book in like 2002 or something like that. I don't think we've talked about it.
That's another just a terrific book, and really quite in terms of like a kind of a skinflint weapons program or weapons program on the cheap. They're trying to use, in particular, they were trying to use smallpox as a vector for Marburg. Which is just like, why? And they assumed that the Americans were also doing the same thing. And it was only after the end of the Cold War, it was just like, no, that was just Soviet. That was just you guys.
That's just you.
We didn't. We weren't quite. Wow, you guys were super into this whole Cold War thing. We were only. But make a good. Oliver, what prompted you to read Red Cloud at Dawn? How did we get from AI to Red Cloud at Dawn? That happened. It was a quick transition for me.
That was quite a jump. Sorry. Well, I was just thinking about, at the time, it was such a huge development, like an earth-shattering development. And these days, it seems like a lot of comparisons are being made in terms of like general intelligence or super intelligence to that kind of
world-ending events.
World-ending, potentially, apocalyptic sea change. And so that was me making the unannounced.
I think it's a good jump to make because I do think it's like worthwhile comparing like this kind of fear of a computer program to Tsar Bomba, where there was like a legitimate concern that they were going to light the atmosphere on fire.
And that was a hydrogen bomb. That wasn't even that late.
It was not that late, but I think at that point, like, I think that was the one where they kind of scared themselves. Like, that's still, I think, the largest nuclear detonation of all time. And I think that there was like, okay, time to come off the gas pedal in this one here. But this looks like a great read. Sorry, didn't mean to
Yeah.
take us down to Soviet weapons.
Oh, no, not at all. No, that's really interesting. I see in the description there that they tried to weaponize AIDS. So that's
They were. Yeah,
that's
what
really
they again.
Commitment. Yeah.
But we were all doing that, right? That wasn't just no. Oh, that was just us too. Okay.
Oh,
Sorry.
well, first of all, based, but second of all, that actually brings me to another book, which I think is sort of related to the sort of tech axis, tech economy, political economy axis that we've had a lot of in 2024, which is called More Money Than God. My friend who works in London had to read this for his economics course. And I thought it was funny that at the London School of Economics, you have to like read a book that just shits on hedge funds. But it's really, really well done because I think it is because they go into the psychology of each individual sort of like superstar group in these hedge funds up from the 50s and 60s to whenever this was published, like 2010, so right after the great financial crisis, and their methods. So it's kind of a pairing, sort of how I think.
Interesting. Yeah.
I think a lot of people who are in the computing or high technology canon sort of look up to certain individuals and their methods and their life and times and things. And then this was like the same thing, but for financial wizards and examining their psychology and whether it's morally justifiable and that sort of thing. But really, really good book, I think.
Yeah, I would also recommend When Genius Failed, which is on LTCM in particular, long-term capital management, by Roger Lowenstein, another very good book that takes one of these. I like the fact that you got all these different chapters on just eyeballing the chapters. There's some good stuff here.
Oh, it's long-term capital. Yeah, that was in the book as well.
Yeah, no, LTCM is a chapter in More Money Than God, and it's a very there's an entire. I mean, that whole thing is wild. That looks good. I would like to point out in defense of business education that if you look at like the curriculum in like the case study approach, they actually spend a lot of time talking about how businesses fail. Just how well that's internalized is an open question, but. Yeah, it's good stuff.
If I could offer one last thing, which isn't a book.
You may.
Before
Yes.
So there is this project that this person I connected with on LinkedIn, and now I'm forgetting their name, which is shitty of me, but it's called, I don't know where else I'd possibly share this, but it's called Oats, and they're starting from bytecode going up to, instruction sets and writing your own compiler and writing an assembly, and their approach to teaching is really, really fun and novel, I think. So I just linked it.
Yeah, that's it. That is good. Like, I think you're right. I think you're like, look, this is not a book. I just don't know where else I'm going to drop it. So this is coming in right now. I think this is a good one. It looks good. That looks neat.
All right. Well, thank you. I'll let someone else go.
Yeah, you bet. Absolutely. So Adam, do you have any other books on your list? I've got, I do have one more.
What? I got one more it was a pretty weird one, but I really enjoyed it. Just a weird thing to say about it. So it was a book called Remembered Prisoners of a Forgotten War. And it was about interviews with Korean War POWs. And I knew just embarrassingly little about the Korean War.
Interesting.
And so it was a great education about the Korean War for me, someone who knew very little about it. But then apparently Korean War POWs were really treated very poorly. And in fact, not just POWs, but veterans. So just a very odd time in American history, not the heroes of World War II, not the sort of empathetic creatures of or figures of Vietnam, but these kind of middle children who were sort of not well trusted. And the weird thing is I got to this through a book of fiction. Last year I read Anthony Doerr's Cloud Cuckoo Land, which is a great, weird, time jumping book. Really enjoyed that one. Or maybe not time jumping, but kind of Rashomon, like, telling the story in a bunch of different time periods, and used as one of them being in the Korean War in a POW camp. And so this was source material for that book of fiction, and that's how I.
Oh, interesting. This is like a bibliography from a book of fiction.
Yes,
yes. That's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway,
that's
not for
really
everyone, but yeah, I mean, I didn't know anything about this war, and it was a really neat one, and something from again, interviews with all these POWs, with all these veterans, done 2000, 2001.
Yeah, I got to say, like, I didn't know a lot about the history of Korea or the Korean War until Samsung. And I want to read this. This will be really interesting because obviously this is very current history. I mean, this is where there's still, the shadows of that war definitely linger. So
absolutely.
That looks really good. So one that I read and actually made such an impact on me. I wrote a blog entry about it. But I finally read IBM and the Holocaust, Adam. This is a book that had been on, and I think I don't begrudge them the title because, like, it is about, you know what I mean? I mean, boy, how do I walk around this one?
It's a heavy title. It's a little heavy.
Exactly. People see the title and they're like, "Oh God!" Like, I just don't know if I'm in the mood for a Holocaust book. But it's not. I put this book off for too long. Is what I'd like to say. I put this book off for too long, and I think if it had been titled IBM and Nazi Germany, I think I would have read it a little bit earlier because I would have been. I mean, which is not to take away from its tie into the Holocaust, which is very real. But it is not a book about the Holocaust. It is a book about IBM and Nazi Germany, and by extension, the Holocaust. But an excellent book, very, very thoroughly researched. It was when it came out, it was I remember when this book came out. It was a big deal when it came out. It was done without IBM's cooperation. IBM still has not really cleaned up, or clean up's the wrong word. It has not rectified. Or even attempted to rectify this period of its history, and it's pretty bad. I mean, it's Watson is basically Thomas Watson Sr. Very much profited off of Nazi Germany, and it's an outstanding book. And the part of the reason I read it is because I think that you always have this kind of ambiguity about, as technologists, what responsibility do we bear for how that technology is used, right? And that can be, a social media network being abused to foment hate. It can be like a lot of things. And the thing that was, I actually thought there was going to be more ambiguity for IBM than there actually was. I thought another thing that was going to make this a tough read is that there was going to be this tremendous amount of ambiguity. As it turns out, what IBM did was just pretty clearly wrong, and very much violating the law. And the very much pro Hitler and pro-Nazi Germany when it was too late, when the U.S. itself and many other American entities realized what was happening. So this is, and Hitler presents Watson kind of the highest civilian medal from Nazi Germany in 1938. You're like, 1938?
That's late. Yeah,
that's late in the day.
Yeah,
it is late in the day, and but I thought this was a really important book, and I would say don't let not that one would, but don't let the title let you put it off, because this is not. It doesn't have the kind of the anguish to it. It is really, but it is very relevant to us.
Yeah. Great recommendation in part because I think I have put it off. You've recommended it in the past, but I put it off in part because it sounds heavy. So I will no longer put it off.
Yeah,
Looking forward to reading that one.
It's super light. It's just it's a fun little jaunt through Nazi Germany.
Bouncy beach read.
exactly, the bouncy featuring through Nazi Germany. No, I know. It's like how do you like? And I'm trying to like, yeah, how do you express the fact that like, no, it's not nearly as Holocausty as it's made out to be. You're just like Nazi Germany is not as Holocausty as you made. I mean, like, where's that one going? Yeah, I don't, you know what I'm trying to say.
100%. I mean, don't let the gravity kind of put you off.
Don't let the gravity put you off. That's right. That's exactly what it is. Don't let the gravity put you off. And I think also because there's a lot that whole episode can really teach us, and can teach us about kind of what our responsibilities are. And I think actually, honestly, for us, just like candidly, I was looking for, lessons for what our lessons at Oxide would be. And one of them that's like super, super clear is like, obey the law.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And I think that this is part of what was really shady about IBM is that they were doing all of these, they were pulling tricks to go around the bans that were in place around Nazi Germany. So in other words, they were trading with Nazi Germany at a time when that was against the law.
Very relevant today,
yeah.
where trade to China, trade to Russia,
Totally.
is going through a bunch of intermediaries, and there are tech companies that are probably being caught up in that, where it's going through an intermediary, whether they know it or not.
And and in IBM's case, I think you've got a responsibility to know it, right? And in IBM's case, like they definitely know it. But a good read and good guidance, I think, for us all, and not too holocausty. So, there
you go. Something for everybody.
Something for everyone.
Yeah.
Get me out of here. This has been a good good run around here. We got a lot of good stuff, I feel, out of this.
You and I go too long. I can't believe. I mean, it's been over a year. I mean, shame on us.
Shame on us. We did do a book club book though. We did do How Life Works, which time to plug. You have remastered that episode.
Remastered, all new audio.
All new Dolby surround sound.
That's right. Dr.
Greg Cost, as you've never heard him before. But I loved that discussion with Greg. And I actually I'll do a little a bonus recommendation.
All right.
I read Mukherjee's Song of the Cell. This is by Siddhartha Mukherjee. Have you read any of his stuff?
No, none.
He wrote The Emperor of Maladies about cancer. Very good book about cancer. And an unbelievable writer. A great, as a physician and a scientist, and a great author, which is like, these things don't all come in the same person. And so Siddhartha Mukherjee's The Song of the Cell, an exploration of medicine and the new human, which I read after How Life Works. And I found How Life Works to be it was very helpful to kind of get a bunch of that stuff again. And I actually went back, and it's helpful to just re-listen to Greg as part of that. So
nice.
It's my that's my upbeat recommendation. And
even less Holocausty.
Even less Holocausty. That's what it says, right? Even less Holocausty, raves Adam Leventhal.
Yeah.
It's right there in the review. It's good stuff. All right. Well, we got a lot of books to go get. I've already bought a couple of them, actually. Oliver dropped in Deck is Dead, Long Live Deck. We've got a whole episode on that. On that, and like the 6 deck books I read as part of that. I didn't fall down a deck well. I fell down like a deck crevasse. It was
a phase. Yeah. Fortunately, you grew out of it.
I clawed my way out of it, but it took us an episode for sure, and to get me out of there. But it's a good one. I'll drop in the link to that episode, and I want to drop in a link to some oral histories from Hector Ruiz, and some Morris Chang. We've got a bunch of stuff to drop in here, so I'm gonna be hanging out in the chat, dropping some stuff in. But Adam, this is great. And it was great to see you and the team last week. It was great. I mean, obviously,
really fun. Great to get the whole team together. That was terrific.
It was terrific, and I was going back to some of our past podcast episodes. It was kind of like a return to the office Founders Mode mashup. It was a lot of fun. So anyway, great stuff. And look forward to seeing everyone next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.